Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Cannibal Monster, was one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Between 1978 and 1991, he brutally murdered 17 men and young boys. In addition to murder, Dahmer committed acts of rape, dismemberment, and even cannibalism. His criminal and ruthless behavior terrified society, and his case became one of the most famous and horrifying criminal cases of the 20th century. Dahmer was killed in prison in 1994. Dahmer's life and background, from childhood to adulthood. Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. During his childhood, he suffered from psychological problems due to family issues and social isolation. From a young age, he developed an interest in anatomy and dead animals. In his teenage years, Dahmer exhibited unusual and violent behaviors. He faced serious problems in college and turned to drug abuse. Upon entering adulthood, Dahmer began his crimes, increasingly committing murder and rape, which quickly made him one of the most infamous serial killers. Crimes and actions of Jeffrey Dahmer, examining his methods and criminal patterns. Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Butcher, is infamous for his horrific crimes. He targeted men, and after killing them, he would rape and dismember their bodies, keeping parts of his victims' remains in a freezer. Dahmer used chemicals to dissolve the bodies and systematically murdered his victims in his Oxford apartment in Milwaukee. He especially sought out vulnerable individuals and brutally abused most of his victims. Psychological analysis of the cannibal monster, factors influencing his behavior. The cannibal monster suffered from a range of psychological disorders that contributed to the formation of his ruthless behaviors. Severe depression and borderline, schizoid, schizotypal, and antisocial personality disorders pushed him towards social isolation and distrust of others. These disorders, along with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder and necrophilia, led Dahmer to engage in violent and pathological behaviors. Additionally, his inability to establish healthy human relationships and his intense need for control and dominance over others were significant factors in his commission of brutal crimes. This complex combination of illnesses and psychological abnormalities made Dahmer one of the most terrifying killers in history. The arrest and trial process of Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer was ultimately arrested on the 22nd of July, 1991. When the police entered his home, they found irrefutable evidence, including severed heads in the refrigerator and horrifying photos of dismembered bodies, which quickly revealed his crimes. This arrest put an end to Dahmer's ruthless killings, and he was sentenced to death. Jeffrey Dahmer's conditions in prison. After his arrest in 1991 and life imprisonment sentence, Dahmer faced dangerous and threatening conditions in prison. Due to his brutal crimes, he was placed under strict supervision and became despised and isolated by other inmates. His life in prison was marked by daily tensions and constant threats. This isolation and hatred caused Dahmer to experience social alienation even behind bars. Ultimately, on the 28th of November, 1994, Dahmer was killed by his cellmate, Christopher Scarver, who was also serving time for murder, with blows from a metal bar. This murder marked the end of Dahmer's life filled with crime and loneliness. The innocent victims of the Milwaukee Butcher. Dahmer's victims included 17 men of various ages. Below is a list of them. 1. Stephen Hicks, 19 years old, June, 1978. 2. Stephen Tuomi, 26 years old, September 1987. 3. James Dockstader, 14 years old, October 1987. 4. Richard Guerrero, 25 years old, March 1988. 5. Anthony Sears, 24 years old, February 1989. 6. Raymond Smith, 33 years old, June 1990. 7. Edward Smith, 27 years old, July 1990. 8. Ernest Miller, 22 years old, September 1990. 9. David Thomas, 23 years old, September 1990. 10. Curtis Straughter, 16 years old, February 1991. 11. Errol Lindsay, 19 years old, April 1991. 12. Anthony Hughes, 31 years old, May 1991. 13. Konerak Sinthasomphon, 14 years old, May 1991. 14. Matt Turner, 20 years old, June 1991. 15. Jeremiah Weinberger, 23 years old, July 1991. 16. Oliver Lacey, 23 years old, July 1991. 17. Joseph Bradholt, 25 years old, July 1991.